Imagine for a moment that your mind is not a secluded private chamber, but a powerful, sophisticated broadcasting station, constantly transmitting signals across an invisible, boundless ocean of energy that permeates the universe. This ocean is the spiritual world, and every thought, every feeling, every fleeting intention you harbor is a unique, measurable frequency being scanned by an immense array of unseen entities. This is the profound yet often overlooked spiritual reality revealed by Allan Kardec, the meticulous codifier of the Spiritist doctrine. He documented a specific, critical list of mental patterns that do not merely reflect a negative mood, but actively function as high-powered spiritual magnets, drawing in entities whose intentions are far from benevolent, entities he termed obsessors. The true nature of this interaction is not passive. It is dynamic, governed by the universal and unbreakable law of affinity. What you are about to uncover is not merely abstract philosophy, but a practical, detailed survival guide for your spiritual journey, explaining the mysterious chronic negativity that seems to plague your efforts and, crucially, offering the key to the unshakable peace that seems to effortlessly elude others. The reason your life may feel like a constant, inexplicable siege of misfortune, emotional turmoil, or persistent bad luck often lies not in external curses or arbitrary fate, but in the specific low-frequency broadcasts you are unknowingly projecting from your own consciousness. Kardec's revelations were not born of solitary contemplation. They were gathered through decades of careful, systematic, and rigorous communication with countless spirits, spanning the entire moral spectrum from the most sublime guides to the most base, entrenched obsessors. He meticulously charted the psychological terrain that renders a soul vulnerable, uncovering the precise mental mechanisms that transform an average individual into a targeted subject. He didn't invent this spiritual meteorology. He simply translated the universal laws of cause and effect, vibration and resonance, into an understandable human language. We will not only expose these 5 cardinal thought traps, the insidious mental habits that make you a target, but we will also provide the specific, actionable spiritual techniques honed by exemplary mediums under the rigorous guidance of wise, advanced mentors like Emmanuel and Bezerra de Menezes that allow you to fundamentally re-engineer your mental broadcast, fortifying your inner world permanently against intrusion. Prepare to have your understanding of cause and effect, vulnerability and personal power challenged as we dive into the very fabric of spiritual self-defense and the sovereignty of the soul. This journey is about reclaiming the power that resides within your own skull, the ultimate battleground for your destiny. To truly grasp the intricate dynamics of spiritual influence, we must first emphatically discard the limited, mechanistic, and materialistic view of thought that dominates conventional science. Your mind, according to the deep insights of spiritualism, is infinitely more than just a temporary container for electrochemical reactions within the brain's gray matter. It is the soul's engine of creation, constantly emitting a powerful, sustained stream of energetic substance. Kardec's profound investigations, corroborated across multiple continents and through diverse mediums, established that every single thought, whether conscious or subconscious, generates what he termed fluidic waves. These are not metaphors, but actual, dynamic currents of the universal cosmic fluid, the primordial subtle matter that fills the entire universe and serves as the intermediary between the material and the spiritual. These waves are the vehicles of the mind, propagating outward from your perispirit, the subtle, semi-material body that envelops and connects your immortal soul to your transient physical body. The perispirit is the conduit, the spiritual antenna, and the permanent record keeper of your moral state. Think of this essential process like the operation of a powerful, continuous lighthouse. You are the lighthouse keeper, and the light you cast, your fluidic wave, is determined entirely by the internal quality and moral content of your thought. If your thoughts are elevated, focused on benevolence, truth, and genuine service, the light you project is high frequency, clear, and immensely powerful. If, however, your thoughts are saturated with base, low-frequency emotions, envy, persistent rage, crass materialism, or paralyzing despair, the wave you emit is dense, slow, and dark. Entities residing in the spiritual atmosphere And this encompasses the entire spectrum from the highest angels to the most troubled and earthbound spirits, spend their entire non-physical existence scanning these countless frequencies. They are not random in their targeting. The law that governs their interaction is precision, dictated by resonance. They are perpetually seeking perfect vibrational matches, souls whose inner broadcast is in perfect affinity with their own moral and emotional tendencies. When your thoughts are dominated by negativity, you are, from a spiritual standpoint, effectively transmitting a clear, bright distress signal that says, "I am open to your specific negative influence." The spiritual world responds not to the outward facade you present to society, not to what you say you want, but to the energetic truth of what you habitually think and feel. This is the inviolable law of spiritual affinity, like attracts like. Your inner world is the casting director, and it dictates the exact nature of the company you keep in the invisible realm. Therefore, recognizing your thoughts not as fleeting private musings, but as tangible, influential, and public energy is the first, non-negotiable step toward achieving genuine, lasting spiritual sovereignty. It grants you the power to consciously choose your spiritual environment, and by extension, your emotional reality. The first profound thought trap, documented by Kardec's guides, that acts as a potent spiritual irritant, attracting entities specialized in discord, is the pervasive and often socially accepted habit of malediction, which we can understand as the constant, ingrained critical judgment of others. This spiritual hazard extends far deeper than the occasional verbal complaint or gossip. It is fundamentally an ingrained mental practice of perpetually hunting for flaws, relentlessly scrutinizing errors, and dwelling on the perceived moral or intellectual shortcomings of people around you, whether they are strangers in traffic, colleagues in the office, or even members of your closest family circle. The internal energy generated by this habit is the danger. Even if these judgments remain entirely unspoken, locked away inside your mind, their energetic residue is profoundly potent and corrosive. When your mind is consistently steeped in this critical, accusatory perspective, you are broadcasting a subtle but powerful signature of spiritual pride, arrogance, and a deep-seated, subtle form of resentment towards the imperfect nature of humanity itself. You are implicitly claiming a moral high ground, an undeserved superiority over the perceived ethical or practical failures of others. This is a subtle spiritual poison. Spirits, who were themselves profoundly judgmental, relentlessly critical, malicious, or obsessively focused on sowing seeds of conflict during their earthly lives, are powerfully and instantly drawn to this specific low-frequency vibration. They find in your critical mindset the perfect, fertile environment to amplify disharmony, both within yourself and within your environment. These entities do not necessarily have to resort to grand, frightening acts. Rather, they are specialists in the subtle art of exacerbation. They work to magnify petty misunderstandings, fuel small rivalries, and cloud your perception so thoroughly that you begin to see the entire world through a lens of perpetual distrust, cynicism, and antagonism. They thrive on the misery that results from fractured relationships and constant internal dissatisfaction. The consequence of this habit is not just a judgmental outlook. It is a life perpetually surrounded by unnecessary drama, chaotic relationships, and emotional complication, precisely because you have magnetically attracted spiritual company whose sole purpose is to ensure that strife, dissatisfaction, and discord remain your dominant emotional and relational landscape. You become their unsuspecting instrument for spreading unhappiness and skepticism, believing all the while that your criticism is merely objective truth. If the habit of malediction is a subtle, corrosive acid that slowly eats away at the soul's peace, the mental state of vengeance and hatred is a raging inferno, a spiritual lighthouse that draws the immediate and intense attention of the most darkly focused lower spirits. Kardec's spiritual mentors taught unequivocally that these feelings, the sustained, consuming desire for retaliation, to see suffering inflicted upon one who has caused you pain, are among the fastest and most certain pathways to deep spiritual bondage and chronic suffering. Entities who died completely consumed by bitter resentment, having failed entirely to forgive or resolve their earthly grievances, become prisoners of their own hate in the spiritual world. They are perpetually stuck in the loop of the painful past event, their existence defined by the desire for karmic retribution. When they encounter an incarnate mind that is actively nurturing a burning desire for revenge or simply clinging to a deep-seated feeling of unforgiveness, they find a perfect high-energy opportunity to relive their base emotions and project their darkness. The danger inherent in this thought pattern lies in the persistent, corrosive nature of resentment. By deliberately clinging to the memory of a slight, an injury, or a betrayal, you are essentially maintaining a chronic spiritual infection, a deep, open wound on your perispirit that you actively prevent from healing. Spiritual obsessors detect this agonizing weakness, this spiritual signature of pain, and immediately attach themselves to the energy source. They work tirelessly to amplify the initial anger, to meticulously recall and replay the details of the original offense, and to prevent any nascent, fragile feeling of forgiveness or mercy from taking hold in your heart. They feed on your bitterness, your pain, and your isolation, creating a powerful feedback loop. The individual who harbors resentment is often tragically led to believe they are alone in their consuming rage, when in reality they are being constantly influenced and energetically reinforced by an entire chorus of vengeful, suffering entities whose goal is to keep the conflict alive, regardless of the cost to the living person's health or happiness. This cycle tragically binds the victim not only to the obsessor, but most profoundly to the very person they hate, ensuring both remain spiritually chained to the painful event. The only path to freedom, the only action that instantly cuts the spiritual cord and removes the fuel that sustains the dark influence, is the difficult yet profoundly liberating act of genuine forgiveness. Forgiveness is not a gift to the other person, it is a supreme act of self-liberation. The fourth major mental pitfall, one that ensnares countless souls in the modern age, is what Kardec termed spiritual avarice. It is essential to understand that this concept transcends simple, crude financial greed and encompasses the entire spectrum of extreme egoism and materialistic fixation. This is the persistent, ingrained internal conviction that personal accumulation, the relentless pursuit of social status, the demonstration of material superiority, and self-serving desires are the ultimate sole purpose of the human journey, utterly neglecting all spiritual, moral, and fraternal implications. The spiritually avaricious mind is perpetually focused outward, tallying what others possess, strategizing how to acquire more, or constantly comparing its lot unfavorably with that of its neighbors, resulting in a state of chronic, internal dissatisfaction. This mindset broadcasts a low, dense, and grasping frequency, a spiritual emptiness that perfectly matches spirits who, in their own lives, were slaves to the earth. Those who died obsessed with fleeting wealth, temporal power, and the transient pleasures of material control. These earthbound entities, unable to physically interact with the material world they crave, and unable to move on to higher spiritual spheres due to their fixation, desperately seek living hosts through whom they can vicariously experience the sensations of accumulation, acquisition, and dominance. They attach to the avaricious mind, whispering subtle, powerful suggestions that intensify compulsive consumption, fuel the desperate need for outward symbols of status, and normalize the exploitation of others for personal gain, convincing the host that their selfish desires are entirely reasonable and necessary for happiness. This obsession can manifest not just as an addiction to money, but as an uncontrollable need for power in the workplace, an addiction to collecting unnecessary objects, or a deep, gnawing unhappiness rooted in the perpetual feeling of never having or being enough. The result is that the individual becomes a temporary conduit for the obsessing entity's unresolved material vices, keeping both parties trapped in the endless, frustrating, and morally stunting cycle of earthly attachment. They substitute spiritual emptiness with material excess. Perhaps the most tragic and spiritually treacherous pattern is the cultivation of despair and self-destructive thoughts. This is not merely sadness, it is a chronic, deep-seated sense of hopelessness and life's futility. This mental state acts as a powerful, agonizing draw for what are frequently referred to as suicidal spirits, souls who abruptly and prematurely terminated their physical journey and, as a consequence, remain caught in a state of profound confusion, spiritual isolation, intense suffering, and regret in the invisible realm. When an incarnate individual is consistently entertaining thoughts of utter hopelessness, of life's overwhelming burden, or the final escape offered by self-harm, they are generating a spiritual vibration that is identical to the mental and emotional suffering of these lost, troubled entities. The influencing mechanism here is particularly heart-wrenching. The suffering spirits, desperately seeking any form of relief or cessation from their own agonizing state, are instinctively drawn to the living person's despair. They attempt to influence the person to make the very same destructive choice they once made, believing in their confused, isolated state that this action will somehow, impossibly, alleviate their own profound spiritual pain. It is a critical teaching of the Spiritist doctrine that not all instances of severe depression or suicidal ideation originate purely and organically within the person's brain chemistry. Many severe, sudden, and inexplicable onsets are the result of spiritual projection, where a lost entity is effectively broadcasting their own accumulated agony, grief, and despair into a receptive, similarly vibrating mind. This does not, under any circumstances, negate or invalidate the need for compassionate, rigorous medical and psychological intervention. On the contrary, Kardec taught that the holistic and true path to healing requires treating the physical, psychological, and spiritual dimensions simultaneously. It necessitates providing the individual with medical and therapeutic assistance for their physical vehicle and emotional balance, while also employing spiritual education and moral fortitude for their soul's ultimate protection. The mind suffering from despair is uniquely vulnerable, and its healing requires the intervention of both the science of the earth and the science of the spirit. The final category of highly dangerous and spiritually binding thoughts is centered on unbridled sensuality, a concept which, again, requires a comprehensive spiritual definition. This extends far beyond merely obsessive sexual thoughts to include any compulsive, unconstrained pursuit of immediate, transient gratification and vice, such as chemical dependency, gambling addiction, or overindulgence, that subordinates rational moral judgment entirely to instinctual pleasure. It is the spiritual mindset of instant satisfaction at any cost. Spirits who died completely enslaved by these various addictions, whether to base physical cravings, drugs, power, or lust, remain relentlessly tethered to the lower spiritual spheres, unable to progress because they are continually reliving and craving the sensations that dominated their earthly existence. They are perpetually restless and desperate, seeking any and all means to satisfy these insatiable, unresolved desires. They are magnetically and instantly drawn to minds that are already predisposed to thoughts of immediate, unrestrained pleasure and lack moral self-governance. These entities recognize the living person as a perfect temporary host through whom they can vicariously indulge their unresolved destructive compulsions. The mechanism often involves intense spiritual manipulation during moments of inherent vulnerability, during deep sleep, states of intoxication, exhaustion, or periods of extreme stress. The spirit will actively and powerfully implant suggestions that dramatically intensify the host's existing addictive cravings, making them feel overwhelmingly impossible to resist. This influence makes the task of resisting temptation exponentially harder for the living person, leading to devastating cycles of destructive behavior, profound shame, and further spiritual vulnerability. The way to sever this bond is not just through the necessary physical abstinence or therapy, but primarily through the development of moral fortitude, the strength of will, and the deliberate cultivation of higher altruistic thoughts that raise the individual's spiritual frequency above the level of these base, earthbound, and purely materialistic desires. The true cure is in the elevation of desire itself. Compreendido? Continuarei a expansão do script de YouTube em inglês, mantendo a estrutura, o tom narrativo, as regras de formatação, H1 com ponto final, sem bullet points, e o objetivo de atingir total de mais de 5.000 palavras. Understanding the 5 dangerous thought patterns is only the preliminary phase. The other, more crucial half of spiritual self-defense is recognizing the precise mechanism by which the negative influence is deployed, amplified, and sustained. Obsession is never a sudden, mysterious affliction. It is a dynamic, gradual, and often insidious process governed by a strict spiritual protocol. The spiritual mentors of Kardec meticulously classified obsession into distinct stages, beginning with the simplest and advancing to the most severe forms of spiritual bondage. The initial stage is termed simple obsession. In this phase, the negative spirit merely detects your low-frequency thought, perhaps a moment of intense criticism, a flicker of envy, or a sudden burst of selfish avarice, and begins its work by subtly inserting or suggesting similar thoughts into your mental stream. The spirit does not create the thought. It recognizes the seed you planted and begins to water it. You still retain full conscious control and the ability to dismiss the thought, but the negative idea returns with increasing frequency, power, and persuasiveness. The spirit's goal is simply to make the negative thought your default setting, a recurring loop that burns itself into your mental landscape. This initial stage is characterized by unexplained sadness, recurring negative self-talk, or persistent, nagging doubts that seem to arise out of nowhere. The second, far more dangerous stage is fascination. Here, the obsessing entity has successfully clouded and manipulated your judgment through the persistent amplification of your initial negative seed. Your obsessive thoughts, perhaps your desire for vengeance against a perceived enemy, or your conviction that material gain is your only salvation, become so deeply entrenched and dominant that you lose the capacity for rational self-assessment. The obsessed individual genuinely believes their obsession is entirely logical, absolutely correct, and perhaps even morally righteous. The surrounding world, friends, family, and sometimes even medical professionals will clearly see the irrationality, the self-destructive nature, and the dramatic personality changes, but the victim remains completely blind to their own plight, trapped in a self-justifying, dense, energetic bubble created and sustained by the spiritual influence. In this stage, the spirit often convinces the host that they are the enlightened one, and everyone attempting to help them is either mistaken, envious, or part of a conspiracy. This is how the spirit secures its host, turning the victim's pride against them. The third and most severe stage is subjugation. This is the highest degree of spiritual control, where the spirit manages to exert influence over the host's physical actions and involuntary motor functions. This can manifest in various ways, often leading to strange or uncontrolled speech, sudden, violent physical outbursts, compulsive actions like uncontrollable gambling or theft, or even the manifestation of physical symptoms that have no diagnosable medical cause. The host feels completely powerless to stop these actions, often acting against their own moral principles, and later experiencing profound shame and confusion. Crucially, even at this extreme level, the obsessor is always fundamentally dependent on the initial mental seed and vibrational permission provided by the host. They cannot force a positive, benevolent mind to hate or commit violence. They can only amplify, distort, and ultimately hijack the thoughts that already resonate with their own dark, destructive tendencies. The detailed case studies recorded throughout the history of spiritualism reveal that the majority of persistent misfortune, chronic illness, resistant to treatment, and inexplicable cycles of failure in life are often rooted in these subtle but devastating processes of spiritual amplification. The entity finds the frequency, whether it is resentment, avarice, or despair, and systematically turns up the volume, pushing the host further down the path they have already chosen until the thought becomes a devastating reality. Having thoroughly analyzed the enemy, the 5 destructive mental patterns and the mechanism of their deployment, we now turn to the absolute, infallible defense. It is here that Allan Kardec, under the guidance of the most elevated spirits, delivered the most profound and practical spiritual truth. Spiritual protection is an inside job. The most potent and effective form of spiritual defense is not to be found in amulets, specific prayers recited by rote, any expensive external ceremony, or even in the protective presence of others, but in the constant, conscious, and unyielding vigilance over our own thoughts. This principle is rooted in the spiritual law that a lower spirit can only influence you to the precise extent that you allow it through the law of affinity. If you choose, systematically and intentionally, to occupy your mind with elevated, constructive, and benevolent thoughts of justice, gratitude, peace, and service, you simply change your spiritual address. You raise your vibrational frequency to a pitch that makes your inner world incompatible and inaccessible to lower entities who find the higher frequency painful and repellent. This is the essence of moral transformation, the single most powerful act of self-defense. It means actively, daily cultivating the opposite of the 5 pitfalls, choosing kindness and understanding over criticism, forgiveness over vengeance, charity and altruism over avarice, hope and gratitude over despair, and temperance and self-control over compulsion. The greatest shield you possess is the quality of your own character. Kardec's question 470 in the Spirit's Book asks directly, what is the most effective means of combating the influence of evil spirits? The unequivocal, concise, and timeless answer provided was to practice good and to put all your confidence in God. This instruction establishes the foundation of all true protection as an internal moral and mental practice. When your thoughts are systematically directed toward doing good, practicing mercy, and seeking spiritual enlightenment, you naturally raise your vibrational frequency to a level that not only repels baser influences, but, conversely, attracts the benevolent, protective guidance of superior spirits who resonate with those elevated values. This requires persistent daily effort, a spiritual workout that never ends, demanding introspection and humility. But the reward is an unshakable inner fortress of peace and a perpetual tuning into the frequency of wisdom and calm. The moment you decide to fundamentally change your moral landscape is the moment the obsessive entities lose their power over you, regardless of how long they may have been attached. The foundational principle of vigilance needs a practical, moment-to-moment technique, and this was provided by the spiritual mentor Emmanuel, the guide of Chico Xavier, through the discipline of immediate mental substitution. This is the active, instantaneous intervention required the moment a negative thought or spiritual suggestion is detected, offering the incarnate soul a real-time defense strategy. The technique itself is straightforward, yet demands intense spiritual training. The instant you recognize a perilous thought, be it a sudden spark of judgment, a flicker of material envy, a surge of irrational anger, or a whisper of despair, you must immediately replace it with its spiritual opposite. This replacement must be intentional, firm, and instantaneous. Consider the 5 major pitfalls: malediction, criticism. If a thought of harsh judgment against a colleague surfaces, consciously and forcefully compel your mind to identify and focus on a positive attribute, a moment of generosity, or an act of kindness performed by that person. You must choose to see the light even when the darkness is obvious. Vengeance or hatred. If a wave of deep resentment towards an old antagonist rises, immediately send a powerful, heartfelt wish for that person's peace and well-being, or mentally recall an instance of their own suffering, which often generates mercy. You are actively choosing to substitute the corrosive venom with the spiritual antidote of blessing. Avarice, egoism. If you are consumed by jealousy over someone's success or possessions, immediately redirect your mind to contemplate an act of genuine charity you can perform, or focus on the principle of universal sharing. You counteract the spirit of taking with the spirit of giving. Despair, self-destruction. If a dark cloud of hopelessness descends, instantly recall all the blessings and moments of grace you have received, or mentally repeat the prayer of gratitude, focusing on what remains rather than what is lost. Sensuality, compulsion. If an intense craving for vice, substance, lust, etc. rises, immediately substitute the visualization of the vice with the visualization of the positive consequence of restraint, the peace, the clarity, the health. Emmanuel profoundly emphasized that this practice must become an instantaneous involuntary reflex, as swift and automatic as withdrawing your hand from a source of sudden pain or heat. The purpose of this technique is not to pretend the negative impulse doesn't exist, which can be counterproductive repression, but to actively and deliberately deny it the time and space to anchor itself in your consciousness. By instantly substituting the negative with its positive counterpart, you are performing a spiritual alchemy, transforming the base, low-frequency mental energy into a refined, protective vibration, thus neutralizing the exact signal that the obsessor seeks to amplify. You disrupt their access point before they can even fully tune into your frequency. The disciplined practice of immediate substitution is enhanced by combining it with 2 potent supplementary tools: all governed by a crucial temporal discipline. These techniques, taught extensively through the communications of André Luis and Bezerra de Menezes, provide immediate reinforcement against spiritual pressure. The first tool is the neutralization prayer. In moments where you feel a strong intrusive wave of negativity, temptation, or aggressive mental influence, you must stop all other internal dialogue and immediately and mentally utter a simple, powerful phrase that realigns your spiritual core. This is not about complex incantations, but a declaration of submission to higher guidance, such as, "Divine Source, remove from me every thought, suggestion, or feeling that is not of pure love, truth, and ultimate peace." This is an act of spiritual warfare carried out in silence, where the brief invocation instantly alters your vibrational pitch, creating a discordance that repels lower entities and establishes a mental shield. The second tool is protective visualization, the visualization of light. When under mental bombardment or feeling deeply vulnerable, immediately visualize a brilliant, powerful sphere of white and golden light forming around your head and then expanding to completely encompass your entire body. This visualization is emphatically more than mere fantasy or hopeful imagination. Superior spirits confirm that, when performed with sincere faith, conviction, and a clear moral intent, this visualization activates real, protective energies within your perispirit, channeling the universal cosmic fluid into a palpable, energetic armor. This light acts as a genuine energetic barrier against disruptive, dark influences, and also serves as a beacon for high spirits who recognize the call for help. Finally, these tools are governed by the critically important 30-second window. Spiritual teaching stresses that there is an approximately 30-second interval between the initial, fleeting surfacing of a negative thought, the spiritual suggestion, and the point where it gains enough momentum to establish itself as a powerful, dominant, and self-reinforcing pattern in the mind. If you recognize and intervene consciously with substitution, prayer, or visualization within this brief, crucial half-minute, you maintain full control and successfully abort the influence attempt. If you allow the time to elapse without firm, conscious resistance, the negative thought gains dangerous momentum, taking root and making neutralization exponentially more difficult and demanding. Mastery of this 30-second rule, the spiritual discipline of acting immediately upon detection, is the single most important secret to conscious spiritual self-governance. It requires unwavering self-awareness and instant mental redirection. We conclude this essential discussion with the ultimate assurance given by the spiritual mentors. Your free will is absolutely sacrosanct and respected by all forces, whether higher or lower. No spirit, regardless of its power, experience, or malevolent intent, can force you to think, feel, or act against your conscious, determined will. The entirety of spiritual influence, as meticulously revealed by Allan Kardec, is never a matter of imposition or brute force, but always one of affinity, resonance, and permission. Spiritual obsession is not a cruel act of arbitrary fate or divine punishment. It is the natural, predictable consequence of habitually choosing mental patterns that are aligned with spiritual lowlife, attracting entities whose moral landscape mirrors your own internal negativity. This fundamental truth hands you the greatest power imaginable, the power to choose your spiritual company, and therefore the absolute power to choose your spiritual destiny. By integrating the lessons of constant vigilance, by practicing the immediate substitution of judgment with kindness, of hatred with forgiveness, and of despair with hope, you are not merely engaging in a defensive posture against external threats. You are undertaking the profound moral and intellectual transformation that is the entire purpose of your earthly incarnation. The ultimate freedom lies in the conquest of your own mind. When you learn to consciously and consistently direct your thoughts toward benevolence, truth, patience, and selfless service, you instantly cease to be a potential victim of negative forces. Instead, you become a deliberate and powerful collaborator with the superior spirits who labor tirelessly to guide humanity toward light and true peace. By fundamentally altering the quality of your habitual thoughts, you dramatically alter the quality of the spiritual influences that are drawn to you, and in doing so, you re-engineer your entire destiny. The internal battlefield, the space within your own skull, is the only one that ultimately matters, and the choice, moment by moment, thought by thought, within that critical 30-second window is always, irrevocably, and completely yours. The time to claim your spiritual sovereignty is now.